So we're having an informal conversation with the man behind Ghost, Mr. Tobias Forge. So just to start off, how did you originally decide that Ghost was going to have the satanic imagery that it does?
The whole satanic aspect of it came as the first song was written. So that was in 2006. Because it all just started with this one song that was written. I mean, I was in other bands at the time, and I just sort of happened to stumble upon this song that I accidentally wrote. And at the time, I mean, I had spent most of my time, during my, my first band and my adolescence was all spent in death and black metal bands. So the whole quote unquote satanic thing was for me, very, very natural. Very, very. I've sung way worse things than this.
Why do you put it in quotes?
No, but because people assume that this is like an added imagery to Ghost, whereas for me that was just like that. I can do that backhandedly.
Gotcha.
That's
So it wasn't
my
satanic,
go-to.
it was just you.
Yeah, well, I mean, as aesthetically, I come from a background where the devil is very dominant and very, that symbolism and that lingo is very common in death and black metal.
Right.
But at the time, 2006, I wasn't really. I had sort of skewed away a little. I was doing sort of pop rock bands at the time, and this song came to me, and it just felt like, wow, that felt very intuitive and very pleasing, but also very left of center in terms of it's like a very harmonic rock song, but it has these sort of tritonous elements, and the lyrics was just screaming sort of occultism, and that was Stand By Him off of the first album.
Yeah.
And long story short was that a friend of mine who used to be, and even in 2006 he was, we had sort of stopped playing together. We had been in several bands together, but we had sort of parted, but we were still very close friends. And I came to his apartment with the intention of showing him this song because he had a sort of a recording setup at home. And I said, I would love to do just cut a very, very simple demo of this song. You might like this because it's kind of funny. And we said there and then, this might be a fun thing to do.
Right.
A good excuse to do something together. But I was moving to another city, and we knew that this is not. It's not like we're going to start rehearsing and do this now. And I said that, well, my only concern is that since this song was so intuitive and so weird, in a way, the mixture between sort of AOR chorus meets some sort of gnarly, sort of muddy metal. I really wanted to feel as intuitive, so let's put it this way: if I can write 2 more songs in the same vein that feels as fresh and as fun,
that just fall out of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we should do it. So fast forward over 2007, in March 2008, that's when him and I got together again. We'd hung up in between, but that's where we went into. He was working at a studio at the time, and he had some time accumulated, I guess. So we got a weekend.
So when it kind of happened, when it was just kind of coming naturally, at a certain point, did you realize this is what I need to focus on?
That happened towards the end of 2009.
Really? So it was 4 years or longer even?
Before that, because there's a difference between knowing what I wanted to do with the project and then knowing that I wanted to do that project wholeheartedly.
Got it.
Because during 2008, we went into the studio twice to record 5 or 6 songs, and that was the major bulk of what what ended up being our first album.
But still, at that point, kind of a fun one-off that you're feeling a little natural with, but nothing you're
Right.
You're not really
it
feeling
was,
like this is going to be the big thing.
It was just a heart
Right.
project.
Right.
Towards the end of 2009, I had undergone a few, drastic changes in my life. I had 2 kids.
Oh, wow.
1 pregnancy, though, but we ended up having twins.
I was going to say, that's really impressive. I'm glad you added the twins part in there, because I thought, man, that could have been amazing. 2 kids, 1 pregnancy.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But we'd had them in the Christmas Eve 2008, and towards the end of 2009, I just had one of those. I mean this in a very positive way, but I had a sort of an epiphany that, wow, like, I am where I want to be in terms of my family, but professionally, I am nowhere near where I want to be. I had a job that I didn't want, a job that I wasn't qualified for.
Doing what?
I was tech support at a.
Oh, really?
At a, phone. People phone me.
You were actually the guy I talk to when I have trouble with my DirecTV.
Yeah, and if you did, you were unlucky, because I know nothing about. I'm completely untechnical, but I know how to bullshit.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
It's like
we're gonna get along great.
yeah, I can sell shit, but it's like, so I did fine, I guess. I'm sure there's a boss somewhere now. Hey, Jimmy, laughing. But
do those people know what happened with you?
yes,
They do.
because eventually I had to quit.
Right.
And my boss, who was also my friend, I guess that was why I got the job.
Right.
He was like, yeah, I'm surprised you didn't do it before, and I don't really understand how you managed to sort of juggle this all the way, but okay.
At a certain point, those overlapped, though. Like Papa Emeritus could have wandered in his makeup, not realizing he's going to the wrong job. And answering the phone and the gear.
I quit my job in January 2011.
Wow. So yeah, that was right. Wow.
So
Incredible.
yeah. No, that is probably one of the biggest feats ever. I mean, all those years before that, all I ever wanted really was to live off of music.
Yeah.
And now I've done that for 7 years,
Incredible.
which is, that alone is a dream come true.
And so your kids are 8, 7, 8, 9 years old?
They're turning 10 now.
Okay. 10 years old.
Yeah.
And wow, that's crazy. That's a hell of a span there for the IT tech department. A couple of kids, and the next thing you know, you're the rock star.
Yes.
What's the drastic change at home?
The drastic change at home.
Through that, I assume the family saw a different person initially. The kids wouldn't know, but that's a pretty drastic change in life.
It is,
in
yeah.
7 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that the one thing that sort of the divergence between myself and the rest of the people around me was that in a way, imaginary, I was already all these things. I guess that was the epiphany towards the end of 2009, where I noticed, like, I'm not a rock star.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere
But you
near.
were, because you were like Clark
that.
Kent. You were hiding your Superman.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was where I was just like, wow, this is fantastic. How extremely far from where I want to be
Right.
professionally.
You actually were.
It didn't correlate with my self-image at all. And now, luckily, and I have to pinch myself every once in a while, knowing that, wow, you're actually quite near where you all those things that you fantasized about up until you were 29, basically. But I was so far into my imagination that I guess that was the only real clear moment of time, was that in 2009, 2010. That's where I sort of was the closest to reality, and then I sort of got back into it.
That to me is great advice to somebody who's trying to do what you're doing, because you knew what you were, you just weren't doing it. So you just had to find the building blocks to be the thing you knew you were. You know what I mean?
I guess so.
It's almost like you saw the future and you just weren't doing what you wanted to do. Like, I think a lot of people say this is what I am and then stay where they are, just being afraid to bridge the gap. And your bridge is extreme. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a very odd thing to say. You know, I knew exactly, in your imagination, you knew this already. This was there. So it just,
Yeah.
you just weren't doing it.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
and for many years I thought I was very close, and then I'm obviously now knowing more what it takes and what, you know, all the stars that needs to align in order for it to happen, and all, you know, all the decision making and
Yeah.
all the decisions that has to be right and all that. I also know that it takes a lot more than I thought when I was a kid, but.
What was the thing you didn't know that you know now? The missing element. You're like, oh, it couldn't have happened then because I didn't know that.
Well, for one, which I think that a lot of artists that are maybe not so professional, what they can eventually get a little bit of a sort of a rude awakening is that if you want to be a professional artist, unless you are out of this world different, you might have a shock as to how repetitive it is.
Really?
And also the fact that it's not always very creative. You have creative moments
Right.
where you have to be creative, as in you have to write new songs, you have to pick a new dress, you know, you have to
Do the process.
you have to do
Right.
you have
Right.
to make your product. But I like to compare it to, it's like being, you are a architect and a carpenter. So you draw the house,
Right.
so that's creative. That's when you take all those aesthetic decisions.
Right.
That's when you're creating, you know.
Like the real process of creativity.
Yeah, that's where your imagination sort of blossoms, and then comes sort of a not so interesting part, and that's to
Building.
get all the paperwork done and all the
Right.
permissions and all that, and then you have to build the house,
Yeah.
and that's not very creative at all,
No.
because you have to follow the blueprint, and it's very sort of
Yeah.
labor, and I think that is the one thing that a lot of, especially when you're like arty and indie,
Yeah.
that you get a shock that I don't want to do the same thing all
Right.
the time. Well, you have to.
Right. It's a job.
If you're popular and people
Right.
want you to play there, and there, they don't want you to recreate your entire thing every night. They
Right.
want to hear the songs that they
What
heard.
you built.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing,
Yeah.
and you have to like do that, and and just as much as an architect or a carpenter, you know, you expect what's on the paper to materialize in this house. You have to think of it as a restaurant. If you're known for your fricadellis,
Right.
you have to make them.
Serve them.
Yeah, you have
the
to make
same
them
every
the same
time.
way.
Yeah.
That people, you know,
Right.
their cousin was here last week and said they were fucking great.
Yeah.
So you have to deliver accordingly.
Right.
And I think that was, for me, I have read so many rock biographies. I was already so far into the idea of that maybe when I was a kid I didn't know that. When I was a kid I thought that I was going to transform into another person. That I was not going to be this kid from Tannefors,
Right.
Linköping. I was going to transform into someone who was not from Linköping, who didn't have my background.
Was it an attempt to leave that behind, do you think? Or is that something... did you
I
want
guess
to be
so.
a different person?
Even though I must say that my life was not... I had a very nice family.
Right. So it
And-
wasn't something like an internal struggle to leave something dark.
I definitely have had a burning desire to transform into something else.
Was it too normal?
I don't know.
No?
It's hard to. I mean, I try to communicate with my younger self often, but it's hard to. It's kind of cloudy, you know.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what it was.
And what is
But-
normal?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, as much as I can look back on my childhood and all the different aspects of it now with way more sober eyes, and like I can definitely break down things into like, well, that's how you felt.
Right. So just self-analyze you much
Right.
later on.
But I felt that way,
Right.
and that made me want to do a lot of things. But looking back at it, it was like, it wasn't that bad, you know?
Right.
I was actually quite privileged. We didn't have a lot of money, but I was fortunate to grow up in a home there where I was overwhelmed with a lot of culture, for example.
Right.
My mom is still extremely liberal, like very and very. She used to work in art and like an art gallery, and she did works with. She was not a painter, but she worked with painted pictures. And so via her, I got a lot of that
Culture, yeah.
culture, and I had my older brother, who was a teen. Throughout my whole childhood, he was a teenager and became in his 20s.
Yeah.
So I got so much for free that I now utilize.
Right. So just an eye-opening experience kept it.
Oh, of
there
course.
were no
I
boundaries.
mean,
within-
none of this would have happened hadn't it been for those two.
Right. Being in an artistic surrounding,
Right.
your avenues are much wider. Usually,
Exactly.
Right.
And not at home, but someplace else, which was a big trauma for me at the time, was my father, who's also a very, very inspiring person because he worked in TV and film,
Okay.
and also very creative, also a very, very nice person.
So were they encouraging for you to go in directions that were not usual for a mother and father to say, like, you know, explore this, explore that, which most people would say you're crazy to try this, or you're crazy. You know, they want their kids to be down safe areas. Sounds like you were in a very artistic surrounding. It was like, you know, explore and experiment with all sorts of things. Did you take advantage of it, or was that something you knew you could do later?
No, I definitely. I was very, very consuming the things that went around me, went on around me when I was a kid.
So you
I
sponged.
consumed all that music.
Right.
My mother listened to a lot of '60s music, so early on I got all
Wow.
all the Stones, Beatles, and Janis Joplin,
Right.
and all that stuff. And she would take me to a Keith Jarrett concert, you know, when I was a kid. I thought it was boring as shit.
Yeah.
but it was. For any of you who don't know Keith Jarrett, it's just basically what sounds like improvisational piano.
Yeah. For a long time.
For a long time. But, you know, that's the sort of stuff that she would take me to. And like B.B. King, and we went to see Ray Charles. And I actually, since I was a kid and the only kid at those concerts, I could just waltz in the backstage.
Oh, wow.
So I met like Ray Charles,
No
I met
kidding.
B.B. King. And
Just by being an interloping child, an unattended kid.
yeah.
Genius. Do you let your
So-
kids wander around?
They do. My
Yeah.
son is, I guess, is not as sort of interested in showbiz, as in live performance entertainment, as my daughter is. She's
Yeah.
very, very. You could tell that she's
She's more drawn to it.
more exhibitionistic.
Oh, right.
But both of them are clearly showing signs of creativity and ingenuity, I guess.
Right.
Which is, I guess that's where I fail little to be as cool as my parents, because I'm a little bit more like, are you sure you don't feel like a burning desire to become something extremely normal?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know that it's really hard,
Yeah.
right?
The safe route.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, no, you want, arteries, like open heart surgeries, like really well paid.
My daughter is 13, and she's starting to talk to me about how interested she is in DNA. And I'm like, great.
Good.
Go
Push
for
that.
it.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do that.
Learn about all that.
I told her, like, if you want to, make some money, you should go into the rental business. You should rent out lights and PA.
Yeah, really.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
That's
and
a
you
whole
should do
business in
band
itself.
accounting.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. Push her in the right direction. Give me a deal.
Did anyone give you advice on that in that regard, as far as accounting? So many horror stories of bands that are kind of flying through and like becoming a thing,
Right.
and they get wrapped up in the wrong side of this business real fast, and it just stumps you. Did someone in your growth kind of find you and say, Tobias, follow this guy, don't follow that guy, go this way, go that way?
No, I come from as I said, I come from a culturally rich background.
Right.
In neither of those two families, there wasn't a whole lot of money, and I basically just come from a very non-business oriented
Right.
family, which has definitely, showed
Yeah.
sometimes.
Have
I'm
you-
learning.
Do
I'm
they
trying
still
to
have
learn.
that musical take advantage of the guy who may or may be artistic but doesn't see this side of it as well? Is that something you've had to learn? Obviously, you had to. But
I've had to learn,
Yeah.
and I'm doing my best. I mean, luckily, since years back, I do have a very, very, very good relationship with my managers,
right.
and I've had the same accountants.
So everything kind of
for
fell
these
in
years,
place.
and the same
Yeah,
lawyer,
yeah.
and so
That's
we're a good family, and they are doing their darndest to sort of raise me to make good decisions.
Because you do need blockers, don't you? When you're
Oh,
when
of
you're creative,
course.
you have to have the people that'll take the stuff that'll crush the creativity and cause cynicism all around you all the time.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. The only thing that I am very keen on being on top of is there's this tendency, then it's always been like that, I guess, especially back in the good old days, that from a artistic meets economic point of view was not, those were the Middle Ages, and I
Right.
guess the Dark
Yeah.
Ages.
The Dark Ages.
Because as if you know your rock history, which I'm sure you do, Beatles, Stones, Pink
Yeah.
Floyd, all those bands went through some really, really mind-blowing economic
Yeah.
fuck-ups.
Huge.
Which is like when you read through the books, you're like,
Another
oh,
one.
the
Yeah.
fuck could you fall for that?
Did that really happen?
And not only
Yeah,
fall
it's-
for it, but it's all gone when they figure it out.
Yeah, and
That's
they,
the
they're
craziest
all,
part.
especially all the British bands, were forced
Yep.
into exile, and it was just like this. And luckily, this was a completely different time and age where they still had records coming out, and they managed to sort of get back that fortune
Right.
over the years. But many of them were borderline broke,
Yeah.
especially in the early 70s. And so, of course, I picked up on those things. I mean,
Right.
I always knew that would I ever make X amount,
Right.
I don't go buy a car.
No.
Like, you don't go buy a fucking
Right.
your dream car.
Totally.
That's so I knew that.
Right. You don't waste it.
I got
Right.
wasted. No, nah, you don't waste it on crap. You need to sort of be a little smart on things. But
Right.
then it's the one thing that has been. Obviously, now we're ranting about economics and
Right.
all the boring, magical things about
Right.
rock and roll, the backside of rock and roll. But the one thing that has I've actually been credited by my accountant, actually, because at some point, he was asking for a meeting, and I was just like, I came into that meeting like, I know, I might look as a fucking crazy person because all the tours have always been sort of in the red, like,
Right.
because I said early on that in order to make this band great and big, we need to look big.
Yeah. You have to spend to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't go around in no fucking van.
Right.
We need to look like we are a bigger band that just happened to come to this venue tonight.
Right.
But we roll in a big bus.
Yeah.
So they think that we are bigger than we are.
This is a stupid aside to that, and I'll be brief with it. The Concorde, when it first came out, tried to match pricing with regular flights, and no one took it. And until they raised their price to triple what regular flights were, they were about to go under, because they're like, the one guy came in and said, we need to pretend we're as big as we actually are. We're not trying to compete. And once they raised their prices to show everybody they're special and elite, they couldn't. There was not an empty seat. So it's the same mentality of saying,
Yes.
look, no, we're huge.
Oh, look at Iron Maiden.
Yeah, they'll
Flying
figure it
in
out.
their
Yeah.
own plane,
Exactly.
and Bruce Dickinson is piloting it,
Yeah.
and and that's
And let the people figure out you're huge.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
it's a little, there's a theory that if you find a $1,000, what should you do for it? You should buy yourself a really expensive suit, because the chances are that with that suit, you actually the chances of you making another $1,000 is bigger than if you
Right.
just save those $1,000
Right.
and buy noodles for them. And that's a little bit of my
Your
sort
thinking.
of my thinking, and that's my lead star, and that has proven to be working so far with
Right.
Ghost, because it's definitely been very much pretend in the sense that boosted up
Right.
in a way that wouldn't be regarded as very economical, as in terms of, I mean, if you want to make money playing rock, you'd be way better off selling the amount of tickets that we do,
Yeah.
but you're two-piece band
Yeah.
right.
and you have no crew.
And you're pinching pennies to get to place to place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You drive your own
Right.
car, then you make
Right.
a shit ton of money. But
Yeah.
we've never done
You're
that.
not
We
doing
go in
that.
2 buses. We're 25 people. We have 3 trucks, so it's
Yeah.
like you have to have a lot of what we say in Sweden. You have to have a lot of ice in your stomach,
Yeah. Oh,
in
yeah.
order to see through this plan. And I have a plan. I know where I want to go, but you have to have a lot of foresight, and you have to bite your lip a lot.
Is this on you guys? Is this obviously it's your money, but is the record company sitting back going, what in the fuck are you doing? The entire time you're like, buy another bus. Get me
Well,
more of this.
the label is not really involved in our touring.
Okay. So this is all on you. This is your
Management
Yeah.
and booking and
Yes, everybody's gone a little bit grayer over the
Yeah.
years. No, but we have a plan together, but it's always a struggle, not amongst us, but
Right.
but like how do we make this happen now? How do we do this? And a lot of the things that are successes also means growth and growing pains, because you have to fill. It's like constantly being given bigger clothes. Like
Right.
oh shit, I need to fill
I
up
need to
this
grow.
shirt now.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I need to bulk up more,
right.
and preferably in muscles and
Right.
not just a big gut. Exactly.
That's lazy.
And so forth. So every step is it also comes with a lot of new questions and a lot of.
Right.
But this is what I like, and I think that going back to the whole problematic, the complexity of becoming an artist, especially in the indie world, where you think every day is just a big dream of just wild imagination where you can just recreate yourself.
Right.
You have to spend a lot of time just
Planning that.
thinking and
Yeah,
planning.
yeah.
And where a traditional stance amongst managers is that you be creative, you be the artist, and we'll make sure that happens. I was very clear very early, that's why I think we've been working so long and that we have such a good relationship. I need to know to some extent how the what the boundaries are.
Right.
Because I can come up with the wildest shit ever.
Yeah.
And and then you just end up cutting that down.
Right.
And believe me, every time we're doing something, it's always like a lesser version of what I
Of
saw.
what you really wanted.
Oh yeah, everything.
Is that true of
Every
even your
single
persona?
thing. Every single thing that we've ever done, I had a greater plan for it.
Really?
before. Yes.
What could be greater than what you take the stage with that we're not seeing?
Let's just say
it's
that
fairly
it's,
great.
But
large.
there was always, every video was more creative and elaborate before.
So
and
you're still
every
happy
stage
with it?
set was bigger, and every stage.
Does it still, like, when you
No,
see
I'm
it,
constantly dissatisfied.
yeah,
with
I can
everything.
imagine that would never lead to a satisfied end.
Exactly, but
'Cause
that's
you're pulling
why
it.
I continue pushing it.
Okay.
Because there's so many things that we need to accomplish.
That's crazy.
But still, it's important for me to know, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Why are we doing this theater run? If we're
Right.
going to do that, why are we opening for that band? And why do we need to do? And what is the plan? What is the plan for
Right.
Berlin? What is the plan for Seattle? What is the plan for? Oh, we did the Moore last time. Okay, then we need to do the Paramount last time.
Right. Constantly planning.
Constantly thinking ahead. Constantly thinking about what we're going to do. Constantly thinking about what it looks like.
That sounds draining.
But this is what I do.
That's why you're
And this is why I read all those books about all the other bands that did it.
That's right. We were just talking out in the hallway about the Queen movie.
Yes.
And how great it is, and how amazing it is to see all this stuff, and how great Rami Malek, or I'm not sure how you say his last name, but he uses those prosthetic teeth throughout the whole movie. And obviously, you wear a lot of prosthetic masks. Any chance you would want to use a pair of prosthetic teeth for maybe a character at some point?
I am very sensitive about teeth,
Really?
about my mouth. I am one of those persons who I have a dental fear and fear of dentists, and
They'll knock you out.
That's
now.
your worst nightmare.
I've got the same thing, and they'll just put you out. You wake up better. It's great.
oh yeah,
They'll
yeah.
give you a couple of pills, you kind of get dizzy, and you're out. Next thing you know, your teeth look great, and you're out the door.
Yeah.
I used to I hate the dentist.
That's what I'm working
Yeah.
up to, but
Yeah.
in Sweden they don't do that. Unfortunately, so I have to go.
They don't
somewhere
knock you
else.
out.
Welcome to America. Let's get you over. Got a couple
Yes.
of great people right down the road.
Yeah.
They'll knock you cold.
No, so basically, I am, and
stay away from the
occasionally I dream about all my teeth being loose and all that.
Oh.
So I don't enjoy. This might sound strange, but I don't like having things in my mouth.
Who does?
Right.
You're in a safe room.
and also anything that would come as a prosthetic form.
Right.
Right.
I would suspect someone else having had it in the
Oh,
mouth
yeah,
before,
that's
and
gross.
it just makes
Don't do
me gag.
Yeah, that's no good.
So you never share socks with anyone?
Not in the
Only
mouth.
bunk socks.
If there was a movie about the life of Tobias Forge, would it end with Ghost being the greatest rock band in the world, or is there something more that we don't know about that's coming? Is there something bigger than Ghost?
Realistically, I don't think that I will ever overshadow the
Ghost.
the Ghost,
Yeah.
and that is not my intention to do so. I am perfectly content as is. If that is my life's work, and if that is what I'm going to be synonymous with and standing behind, this bigger character. And as far as the rest of my life goes, I have no idea.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing. I know what I'm planning and hoping to achieve with Ghost over the next 5 years. When I'm thinking ahead, but I think I use my kids rather as a measuring tool in terms of time nowadays, because it's, as you know, as you grow older, years just
Fast.
They just fly
Really
by.
fast.
I don't even feel like I'm 37 years old.
Right.
I feel like I'm 27,
Yeah.
and after the show, I do feel like 37. But yeah, no, but it's sometimes I guess I get those perspectives. When you see like, today's the the day of this of September 11th, and you look back 2001.
Yeah,
It's like
right.
such a long time. It's like, wow, I was 20 at the time.
Yeah.
I wasn't even in school.
Right.
And that gives you a little bit of perspective that, wow, I've been around for a long time, just doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that I'm doing something right now. But I tend to think forward in a time where I rather think about my kids' age rather.
Right.
Like,
In all the planning, is there an end to Ghost? Like
right now, there's definitely it shadows
Yeah.
about 5 years from now, where I don't know really yet.
Right.
What,
It's a little
what
gray
we're
after
gonna
that
do.
time. But do you have that mentality of let's drive this thing as long as we can, or one of those deals where it's like let's park it where it's huge? You know what I mean? Like some of those bands that continue to push, and you know that it's
Right.
no longer creative, it's no longer fun. You can see it happening.
Oh, well, two things on that. Since I remember still very clearly what it was like not being popular
Right.
or in a successful band,
Right.
I know that things go up and down,
Right.
and you cannot expect this to be on the same trajectory forever.
Right.
It won't be, because even if you get to be the biggest band in the world, it's gonna
It has to
change.
float either way.
Every band, even the biggest bands, and I'm I'd hate to break the magic, but even the band that sold out 90,000 tickets in your football stadium, they might come back 2 years later and do like an arena.
Right.
Still feels huge, but there's a difference.
Big difference.
There's a big difference, and there's
Right.
a big difference playing a 30,000 seat stadium and a 90,000. And so
Oh,
it,
yeah.
you always, even at the top, you have to be very prepared to go up and down.
Right.
And I mean, we're not even there. So I just want to take it as far as I can. As I said, my list of disappointments, production-wise, is still there. I'm still now sort of preparing to do a lot of the things that I had on the list,
Right.
basically since 2008. So I want to achieve all those things and try to do it while we're still on a roll.
Right. Strike while it's hot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you never know when it's going to be. Someday there's going to be some other band just come in and sort of take our
Right.
place, and then people will shift and they'll be interested in something else. And if I played all the cards right, maybe there's a chance we can come back later.
Right.
There's so many examples of bands that done that,
Right.
and that's how it works.
The circle of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I would like to say, and I think I am truthful, and I think I am honest when I say that I love doing Ghost. And if I didn't feel as passionate as I am and have been about it, wanting to focus basically all my time on it,
Right.
I don't want to do it.
You don't want to force it.
No.
And you have to, and that's the tough thing for an artist too, is to recognize when that has happened. Like so many people, I feel like you kind of get into that mode where it's like, have I worn out my welcome? No, I'm going to give them more, and it's more for you than it is for the product. And it's such a self-awareness that is so hard to come by. That the way you sound is different than anyone I've ever talked to, as far as like I am planning this thing down almost to its own arc, a story arc.
Right.
And a story arc, you almost have to know the end before the beginning,
Right.
so you can write to that. And it's fascinating to hear somebody say, no, this is what, so many other rock musicians we've talked to are like, no, this thing's riding, we're going to kill it, and we're going to do this, and it'll be 80, I'll be out on the road.
Yeah.
And they're very rarely,
And within years.
yeah, exactly.
It all
they're
changes.
they're at a
Yeah.
they've been beaten down by something, or something's got them, and they're playing at a small venue they don't want to be at because they're still bitter about not being in the large one. And it's that weird arc that they didn't plan. So hearing you say, no, I've got 5 years of this, and then it's murky, and I'll plan those next 5. It's very interesting to hear somebody so meticulous towards this. It almost sounds like you have an end.
I think that the one thing that when I look at colleagues sometimes, and they're in bands where they hate each other,
Yeah.
and they're very disgruntled by this, that, and the other, and just keep on doing
Right.
it. I'm not gonna go on. It's like, oh, you should quit. Like,
Right.
but it's like, is there really nothing else that you can do in your life?
Right.
Like, are you so set?
Trapped.
trapped
Yeah.
in the idea of basically, I guess what it all comes down to, which I am obviously very, very guilty of, especially in the time when I didn't have Ghost, was that I don't want to have a fucking job.
Yeah,
Right.
It's the
That's
best.
that's
the
basically
motivation.
it.
Yeah.
Because I'm very bad at sort of being
Yeah.
finding my place in
Do you
in the
suffer a
chain.
little from? I'm hyper fascinated with the imposter complex. I've been doing this job for 18 years, and I still wait for somebody to kick the door down and go, "He doesn't know what he's doing." Do you have that inside you somewhere where somebody's going to come in and go, "Tobias is making this up as he goes along, and he's horrifying me," because I
Well,
honestly
you see right through me here.
Yeah, but it is a weird thing. Then, and then you find
When
out
they're on to me now.
yeah, everybody
They're all gonna
feels
laugh
it,
at
and
you.
the more I've talked to people about it, the more I'm like, oh no, everybody feels that way. Of
course.
it's a very real feeling that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm bullshitting my way through this entire thing, but I do feel like I know kind of this is right for me.
Yeah.
But is it the right thing to do? Do you because there's a confidence and an air of almost a confident arrogance that comes off of the stage that's like, don't worry about it, we've got this, and that's really hard to achieve.
I think the one thing that I've come to terms with, which I'm still struggling with because you know that you intuitively move in a different way, is that as what I said before. I still notice that I am still. It dawns on me every now and then that I am still that same
Yeah,
9-year-old,
yeah, that kid.
13-year-old
Yeah,
from Kungsbergsskolan
he
in
creeps in.
Linköping.
Yeah,
And I still walked to school, and I still did that, and I still couldn't get that girl, or
Right.
I still could, and it's not even a bad thing. It's just
No.
like I and you still bear that with you, it for good and bad.
yeah.
Because the good thing about it is, I think it makes you grounded.
Yeah, grounds you. It can be an anchor. It can be grounding.
Yes,
It can be both.
but I will never be as confident as that guy on stage.
No.
Wow.
Is it the stage that does it?
He does that.
He does it. That's cool.
He's all those things that I am not. That
Even
I
still.
can't really be. That, but and as a grown up, I'd say that he's also a lot of the things that I am happy that I am not. Because he's.
What parts of him do you wish you were? Obviously,
I wish that I didn't give a fuck sometimes.
right. And he doesn't.
No.
It's his world.
Yes.
And what parts of him? Like, that's probably the exact same answer. Don't you? What don't you want to be?
I mean, the fun thing about a character like that is obviously that he is some sort of asshole,
Yeah.
and I guess a charming one.
I
But
was going to say an asshole that dances like Fred Astaire.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. Well, myself not being much of a dancer, I do definitely feel that in my hips every day.
Do you feel like you created this because you didn't want people to know your insecurities? Like you on stage as Tobias is judged as Tobias. Is that something you tried to maybe subconsciously avoid by creating this alter ego that can't come back and get you?
Well, to draw a parallel to my childhood again, I must say that very little has actually changed. What I used to do was dress up in a sort of a mixture between my mom's sort of stockings and shit, and my brother's like belts and spikes and all that. And
Right.
I used to run around jumping the couch and listen to like Motley Crue and Kiss and so I dressed up pretending to be some sort of mixture between Mick Jagger and Nikki Sixx,
Right.
and
Wow.
Alice
that's a
Cooper
visual.
and all that. And honestly, like, not much has
Nothing's
changed.
different.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
it's basically the same. That's why I also, from a positive note, can sort of acknowledge the fact that I basically do almost the exact same thing that I used to do when I lived at Tegelbruksgatan 9 in Linköping,
Yeah.
in front of the TV, when I was six years old.
You're still play pretending.
Yeah,
Isn't that great?
it's
You made a
fantastic.
living.
That's your job.
That's
But
awesome.
you know, getting that carte blanche from life
Yeah.
is also like, it comes with a great responsibility, because after I'm done playing, I am still a father
Yeah.
of 2 kids who are just on the brink of sort of preteen. They're
Yeah.
just about to, before I know it, they're going to be adolescent.
Yeah.
And that's going to set off a whole new set of
It changes.
shit.
Changes
Yeah.
things.
And I am a husband. I have a wife.
Yeah. You're
And-
Tobias.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that
Does he creep in to the house every once in a while? Does your wife want him to creep into the house? I should ask that.
Oh.
Does she occasionally say, "Hey, go put the hat on"?
Well, I'll pass on that.
But does he creep into the house sometimes as the "Do you know who I am?" kind of, when things are, maybe there's a a little tension in the home.
I wouldn't subject her to that.
Right.
But
can
as
you
a,
help it?
as a human, I am, as much as anyone who enjoys some sort of elevated position. Of course, I show a bad side
Yeah.
sometimes, where it's like, he can go fuck
Right.
you know, of course,
You become. Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Which
But
is also fantastic. Occasionally.
It's just knowing how to
temperate.
sort of distance
Yeah.
and try to. Yeah, I try to remain. I do my darndest to acknowledge what I am sometimes and what I am not, and the difference between those two
Yeah.
things. And
Do you
try to-
do you have any pets at home? Are you a pet lover?
I am a pet lover, but the problem is that my daughter is allergic to cats.
Oh.
You could write a
and-
song about that. Cats.
Yeah.
The whole album that rhymes all the way
Right.
down. Cats, rats,
Yeah.
cats, whatever you choose.
So you guys have dogs at home, or?
I'm not a dog guy
Oh, okay.
at all, and my wife is not, and we don't. I don't mind a cute little puppy. Don't get me wrong. I love one of my 2 managers, Kristen. She has a beautiful, very little dog. It's called Bronson. That's super cute. Perfect, not smelly dog. But I think I've seen a little bit too much. And actually, to be fair, I was bitten
Oh, there you
in
go.
the face when I was
Oh.
a kid by a dog. So
Were you too close? Was this your fault? You were getting, did you have your face up in the
I
dog's face?
think I was trying to
and-
kiss it,
Oh,
Okay.
that'll do it.
and it just looked,
Snap.
and just it just bit me like with sort of halfway into the mouth and on my upper lip. Like,
Which might have something to do with the dental, the
There's a fear
whole
of
mouth, the
dentists.
fear of teeth.
perhaps.
Could come back to
And
that.
and I've just seen a little bit too much of Cesar Millan, I guess, to understand that.
See, that's a bad. You can't go down the road and think they're all like Caesar Milan shows. They're all,
Right.
I have 6 dogs. I was going to invite you over, but forget it. You'd
Yeah.
go nuts at my house.
You
It's
wouldn't like
insane
it.
over there.
Right. I
would
think
come by.
I am basically too much up my own ass. I'm a little bit too. I sit around a lot thinking about other things, and I have a hard time concentrating on someone
Right.
for a longer period of time, basically.
Fair enough.
And that makes me a very bad dog person.
Yeah.
Because you have to focus so much, and you have to make sure. That's why I like cats, because
Yeah.
cats,
They do their thing.
they do their thing,
Yeah.
and that's how I liked it
Dogs
in
need
our
you.
family.
Yeah,
I,
dogs
I
are a lot
want-
like taking care of a kid.
They can be.
Dogs are a lot like taking care of a child.
Yes, and I like the idea of them sort of being somewhat independent, and we sort of coexist
Yeah.
within our realm.
Right.
But I can't. I have a hard. I mean, I guess it's a deficiency I have. I just have a hard time concentrating on things that I don't find very, 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 very compelling.
Gotcha.
And that makes me unattentive, and that sets off a set of problems that would become very, very problematic with a dog.
Yeah.
So I can't have a dog, and
Is
I
that
don't
from
think
too much ice in the stomach?
right.
I think that could be the problem.
Yeah, but I have that when I think of the things that I want
Right.
want happening, and there are basically a lot of things around me that I'm not interested in. It's just like
Yeah.
sort of on.
It's weird, and I don't know
Free
if it's
collision
cultural.
course.
My grandparents were from Sweden.
Oh,
And-
okay.
And this is odd for me, but it's a very similar type of introspection they seem to have. And I don't know if that's cultural or if that was just a coincidence, but they were incredibly introspective people. I always found it fascinating. They were always worried about what's next for them. And it was a pragmatic way of living life. It was very cut and dry, kind of focusing on what matters most to what we need now.
That might be a climate thing, actually.
Yeah, it could be.
Because we.
Well, they moved from Sweden to the coldest place in the United States, which was Bradford, Pennsylvania. I don't know why you moved from Sweden to a place that's actually a little colder.
they
It was
probably chose it
freezing.
because it reminded them of Sweden.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, maybe.
I know a lot of immigrants from Sweden. There was a big wave of immigration from Sweden in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And a lot of them chose to settle down in
Pennsylvania.
in Minnesota.
Yeah,
and-
Minnesota's huge.
And most of them sort of ended up in the rural part of the country
Yep.
because it looks like Sweden.
It's familiar.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also, especially back then, it was kind of sparsely populated,
Yeah.
which also is very reminiscent of Sweden.
Right.
We live far apart. I mean, I live in central Stockholm, so I have
Right.
people all over the place. Hipsters fucking everywhere.
Place has gone mad.
Yeah,
with
I just stand,
beards.
me and my
coffee.
wife are always joking. Me standing like looking through our shades and like hipsters.
The hipster attack is upon us. But the outskirts are very much the same as they've always been, aren't they? They're very traditional. Outside of the major cities.
Yes.
It's similar to here.
Houses are far apart,
Yeah.
and
It's weird though because
before we had central heating, that we definitely had basically an ice age at
Yeah.
half of the year, and a lot of salty food and
Oh,
a lot of planning.
Lutefisk.
There you go.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh.
culinarily, Sweden wasn't
just awful.
that fun.
My grandma used to cook
Back.
that all the time. It's just awful. It's salt and the
Yeah.
driest fish you could ever imagine. That's
Right.
it. And they loved it. I couldn't believe how many times we ate that stuff. It's just brutal. That's the part where I'm glad.
See, in
mom
my
was
house, it was brisket. It was always brisket.
ugh.
Served up the Brit, and now I can't stand it.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's weird though because I don't know if that's a cultural thing or not, but the very it could be. They were very isolated people that wanted to be self-sustaining,
Yeah, you had to be.
and that's kind of how it sounds like you feel your success in your job is that same way.
I think it also comes from we have a thing culturally where you are basically encouraged not to think too much of yourself,
Oh, really?
which is something that I think stays with a lot of especially successful
Yeah. How
people.
does society encourage that, or is it just passed
It's just
down?
that you shouldn't think of yourself as more than anyone else.
Huh. And
Which
that's the accepted kind of norm of everything.
Oh, we talk about it a lot. It's
Really?
something. It's a common subject because we talk about that as something kind of ridiculous in a way.
Or it
But
almost
still
holds you
stays with
back.
us. It just means that you don't talk about money. You don't show off stuff.
Right.
It's
Huh.
and you don't boast
Yeah.
about things.
And do you think that also is a reason why you become who you become?
I think that many of our successful musicians and athletes and filmmakers we have a very similar background where you knew that there was a little beehive in your
Right.
gut that made you feel different, and you wanted to reach out beyond
Right.
the borders, the confines of your school, your street, your city, your town, and that there was a general disregard to the idea of ever
Right.
breaking out of that.
To be mindful of the idea that you're not special.
Exactly. I don't think that what I just said is a typical Swedish thing. I think that happens
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
You'd have your breaker outers
Right.
everywhere. But I definitely think that culture of
Being a man
the
for
virtue.
others.
What was that?
Being a man for others.
Yeah, but
kind of
also
thing.
the virtue of not wanting to become anything greater than anyone else may causes like an explosion within certain people that makes them really want to break out of that, so they leave and go and do it,
Yeah.
or don't. But that's why I think in Sweden there's definitely a great melting pot in the bigger cities of all the creative people. If you're creative people, you usually just don't stay where you are. You just
Right.
you
Yeah.
go to the bigger city, which I think sometimes is not a very good thing. Because when I moved to Stockholm first time when I was 16, because before that when I lived in my little smaller town, I felt so alienated. And when I came to Stockholm, I was always appalled by the fact that I had a little bit of that Groucho Marx syndrome, where it's like, ugh, I don't want to be around this many creative people. I fucking hate creative people.
Yeah.
They're awful. I want to be the only one.
Right.
Please.
And sometimes they're frustrating because they're so fucking creative.
Yeah. I mean, they think so highly of themselves,
Right.
and they have such big boasting dreams. You
Yeah.
shouldn't think that much of yourself, dude.
Exactly. Then it comes back.
And so then, it's very complicated and also very simple. We're all just human.
We got to wrap all this up, unfortunately, but there's a few things that I kind of wanted to just pick at real quick before we get out of here. First off, guilty pleasures. Do you have any?
I try not to be ashamed
Of guilty
of things
pleasures.
that I like.
Things you like.
Man, I wish I had that.
Yeah,
I tend to be ashamed of
Yeah.
90% of the
Oh,
things
yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's really nothing that I can come up with that I would feel. I think I can think certain pleasures of mine that I like might be a little sort of pathetic, but that would be like I enjoy watching YouTube clips of blackheads being sort of
Blackheads,
being popped.
Pimple Popper.
Yeah.
Have you been to Pimple Popper?
yes.
Yeah. We watch this stuff.
There's a favorite clip that where when someone has like this big thing in his ear. He has like what appears to be a blackhead, and then they start carving in it, and it's just this.
It's a thing.
It's basically it comes out at like a
Yes.
big dice
Yeah.
of just filth,
Oh.
and it just gives me some undefined gratification watching that. I
Yeah.
don't know why,
The
and I
dude that
wish
had
I
the
could.
lump of cottage cheese looking whatever's on his leg, and he came in. He was a flight attendant. He was banging into all the seats, and he's like, "It's been 10 years." I'm like,
Yep. Yeah.
How do you let that go on
How
for
do
10
you
years?
let
And
that
she
go?
cut it, and I swear to God, a gallon of cottage cheese came out, and I
Oh,
sat
my
back
God.
in my chair like somebody was rubbing my back.
Do you remember
This
that?
is great.
Did you see that Pantera film that they did like years ago? There was a series of 3 films, I think, was just stupid shit from their on tour debaucheries.
Dime Vision?
Dime Vision.
Oh, Dime Vision.
Yeah.
I remember in one of them there was this clip of someone had like a bulge on his ass, I think. And they just it's
Off it
just cottage cheese. It was
Yeah.
like a
Oh.
big like ranch. Well,
We
fuck
play
me.
clips on our show every day from Pimple Popper of a lady who had them so many and would describe each one. Okay, that one smells terrible. I'm like, I don't know why I can't get enough.
Oh, this is a
Yeah.
subject of yours that you do?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, Pimple
Yeah.
Popper.
I did not know
talk
that.
about
Okay,
it all
okay.
the time
Yeah.
on the show.
How
I
ironic.
love that show.
Yeah.
I'm upset that it's not running right now. When all the new episodes right now, they're in hiatus, and it's driving me bananas. That show is
okay.
incredible. Yeah.
Well, to wrap things up, I kind of wanted to say to you, I love Ghost. I'm an absolute huge Ghost fan. When I was 16 years old, I was obsessed with a band called My Life with a Thrill Kill Cult. And I had their albums and stickers on my car, and I made a jacket that I had painted, and all, I met the band, and I got their autographs and all that kind of stuff. But I felt a certain way when I watched them perform, and when I would start their albums and start listening to it. I felt like I was a part of their cult. And when I first started listening to Ghost and seeing your performances, I felt that all over again. So first off, thank you. Thank you so much for being able to do that. Is that part of your design, to be able to bring people in like that?
Back in 2006, 2008, I wasn't thinking about that.
Right.
But as we got our first record out and we started touring, I was definitely overwhelmed by the amount of participation.
Yeah.
And from fans and how they dressed up and and did all these things, and the enormous amounts of drawings and figurines and statues and all kinds of stuff that I've been getting over the years. Nowadays, I definitely regard Ghost as a phenomenon is definitely somewhat, I guess, dictated by myself, but it certainly does have a complete life on its own, which is again very gratifying. But it also makes you a little bit humble, because you also know that Ghost is many different things for many different people. And you have to. I used this word maybe a little bit wrong, but tread gently when working with it. Sometimes a little bit tough love, because I need to sort of push it further. But still being aware that it means a lot to some people.
It does.
And it means different things for them, and it means something for me that might be a little bit more like, this is also like my work. This is important for my kids and my wife and my family. But still, it's also very much on the condition that it's well received among these people that hold it so dearly.
Yeah.
So I think it's also a good way to acknowledge your grounding, I guess.
Yeah. I just thought of something great. If we could get you in the gear, all loaded up, in character, ready to go, and get you into Dr. Pimple Popper, we could do the greatest sketch of all time, where you have to complain about this giant thing that's growing on Cardinal Copia's ass, and have it popped in the outfit. I think we could combine the two loves of Ghost and Dr. Pimple Popper in one thing.
That
and
would
satisfy
phenomenal.
so much of my plan for you, Ghost. No?
Okay.
On that note, thank you so much for being with us today. I
Thank
really
you very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you.